Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to realestateinvestormba.com. At Real Estate Investor MBA, we strive to provide valuable information from various experts within the business and real estate community, covering real-time market and economic information as well as curriculum-level material within various real estate investing niches. We aim to be relevant, straightforward, and forthcoming with actionable information for our community. And here's your hosts, Tejas Gosai and Jeremy Moyer. Welcome to Lehigh Valley Private Equity Fund. Lehigh Valley Private Equity Fund is a Regulation D evergreen private fund designed to provide a 7% preferred return and an overall annualized target return of 12% through diversification in lending and acquisitions in the real estate industry. With over 100 years of combined real estate, investment, and management experience, our management team is actively sourcing opportunities and improving real estate in the Lehigh Valley and surrounding regions. The Lehigh Valley is booming. The private sector GDP is larger than 112 countries, standing at over $41.2 billion annually. Lehigh Valley Private Equity Fund uses three methods to create returns for our investors: qualified lending, buy and holds, and rehab resell projects. Our philosophy is simple: quality over quantity. Our primary goal is to protect our investors, and our strategy is to produce consistent high-yield returns. Thank you so much for visiting us. Contact us easily by visiting www.lvpefund.com or call us anytime 24/7 at 484-362-1313. Thank you so much and have a beautiful day. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another one of your favorite episodes of realestateinvestormba.com. We have been pumping out some awesome shows for our guests in the community. We can't thank you enough for giving us a foothold here in the Lehigh Valley. We're really enjoying the guests that we've had on, and we are bringing a lot of valuable information. So we transcribe our podcast on our website. You can read it. We also have it on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. We share it on LinkedIn, Facebook, and iHeartRadio. And we also have this video version that we transcribe as well. We're always looking for guests, and we always want to talk about some different topics. So I'm super excited for the guest we have today. Here's my co-host, Jeremy. Do you mind introducing our guest?
Absolutely. Thank you, Tejas. Hello, everyone. We have Jack Rose with us today. So I'm going to give a little bit of Jack's bio, and then he can fill in the gap. So Jack began his career in real estate at 19 years old, which has spanned 30 plus years. In that time, he's been a recipient of numerous national sales awards from HUD, Fannie Mae, Coldwell Banker, Citicorp, and Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate. He is a president and CEO of two brokerages, Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, Cassidon Realty, comprising over 60 agents, two offices in the Lehigh Valley, and Cassidon Property Management that currently manages 500 plus units for small to medium-sized investor owners throughout the Lehigh Valley, the Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton markets. Currently, he is the 2020 president of Greater Lehigh Valley Realtors and a member of the board of directors for the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. Jack preaches and speaks often about wealth building through real estate. His development company, Petra Holdings and JG Properties, has been built over his career through the acquisition of underproducing and distressed properties, redeveloping these opportunities, renting them, and reinvesting the returns. To date, he owns a portfolio of over 125 rental units and is proud of a very low loan-to-value ratio. He is an approved Pennsylvania real estate instructor and occasional speaker on subjects such as leadership and building wealth through real estate investment, and a frequent article contributed to Inman news and other media outlets. Most importantly, he is a father of two outstanding young men. They have been taught the value of leadership, the necessity for strong work ethic, and the need to laugh at oneself from time to time. They've been taught that a strikeout is learning lesson and that management is doing things right, but leadership is doing the right things. Jack, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon for the interview. There's a ton to unpack here, so I think we're just going to get right to it. So from building up 2 brokerages, a property management company, a sizable rental portfolio, and being the president of the greater Lehigh Valley Realtors, it's pretty impressive. So starting out, why did you start in real estate in the first place, and why are you still doing it 30 years later?
Good question. And it was a great year with COVID. On the board of Realtors, I can tell you that. But I've been on my own since I was 14 years old. I lived with my father, and he was probably one of the first, if not the first, he was one of the first dialysis patients in the Lehigh Valley. So back then the technology was very different. So he was pretty much in the hospital 95% of the time. And the 5% of the time that he was home, he wasn't very functional. So from 14 till 18, 19 years old, I worked in retail at Rickle Home Center. I also had 2 paper routes. I shoveled snow. I cut grass. I mean, I was at 14, 15 years old. I was paying the oil guy. I was paying the electric bill. I was doing all those things. Then my dad died when I was just turned 18. He had died. But it was a sad time. It was a rough time, but it was also a new beginning for me because my dad had one of his best friends was a gentleman named Bob Agentis, who owned a brokerage, a real estate brokerage on East Broad Street in Bethlehem. So at my dad's funeral, and talking to Bob, I hadn't seen him for a while. And talking to him, he suggested that sometime in my I should reach out to him and for a job in possibly becoming a realtor. And situations came out and worked themselves out that opportunity became available 3 or 4 months later. I came home very frustrated one day from my retail job and for a silly thing, and I called Bob and I said, "Can I come work for you?" And he said, "Yes, you can." And I was signed up for real estate classes, and there we went. Now I can tell you that the first couple of years I struggled. I won't lie. Not too many people, or even back then, 98% of people in America, their largest asset is their home, just like it is today. So, I'm an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid. I can't even drink legally yet. And not too many people are willing to entrust their largest asset to a kid. Some did. So, but I worked hard. I ate, slept, and drank real estate.
That's an amazing story. That's awesome. So, over the years, I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes within the industry in the area here. Can you speak to any of that? And why do you like this market? Like, why didn't you just pick up and move to Virginia or to Florida or another market?
Well, me personally, I don't pick up and move. We're like a hub. Lehigh Valley is kind of like a hub. We are geographically blessed. And I say that because we're an hour and 15 from New York, an hour and 15 from Philadelphia. If we want to go to the shore, we can go to the shore. If we want to go to the mountains, we can go to the Poconos. And, because of that, we're also, within 1/3 of the nation's I think it's like 1/3 of the nation's population within a few hours of our location. So, of course, the major employers in the country have realized that as well. So now we've got all these opportunities going on with manufacturing and warehousing, and it kind of makes us Lehigh Valley kind of like a hub. You can get anywhere from anywhere. And I've seen us go from a manufacturing hub to a warehousing hub, and it's created other opportunities.
Well, let me jump in on that. So, we've had some previous guests that were immigrants that came to the Lehigh Valley and built up a whole entire world. And, we've seen so many visitors come here, but you've been here, you've seen all these changes. And now, in a nice way, you got stuck with us the year of COVID. But we've been on an exponential incline for the past few years. And it's been difficult to explain to people that, the Valley is still performing extremely well pre, during, and post-COVID. You mind talking about how the past year and this year is different for you specifically, dealing with all these realtors like me who are freaking out?
I'll tell you this, right now what we're seeing is, if I talk to some friends of mine who are in and out of the city, New York City, on a daily or weekly basis, and basically they're telling me they can't keep up with the moving trucks. So, what we're seeing now is, and we've always had some of this, people selling their townhouse or their duplex or triplex in New York for $1, $2, $3 million and coming here and replacing that property, for 1/3 of the cost or whatever. So we've always had some of that, but now it's ballooned beyond even what I expected.
When you say balloon, though, do you mean like now past COVID?
Absolutely, it's because of COVID. People just leaving the city. They're wanting to get out of New York. And I don't have the data right now in front of me, but just from talking to different agents and people within my own company, but other agents as well from outside my company, it's got to be 75% of the buyers out there are New York buyers right now. I mean, it's pretty expensive, and I'm sure you're seeing this as well. I mean, I went out to a good friend of mine from high school. Had called me last year and a half ago, said he wanted to sell his house. Was thinking about it. I went over. I don't do a lot of, I don't represent a lot of buyers or sellers anymore. But I will take an occasional, a personal referral, personal lead. But he said I went out, and back then I told him it was a year and a half ago. I said $310,000 or somewhere in that price range. And then him and his wife, they decided to wait a little while. So now this is, a year and a half later, he's calling me up now and says, now they're seriously thinking about selling their home. And I went back over and I told him 360, 370. So right then and there, that's a 20% appreciation from a little over a year. If you break that down, that's 2% per month. That the last time we've seen anything like that is, and that's just one case, but I mean, the last time we've seen anything like that in this area was back in the late 80s with the I-78 boom. And that was the I-78 boom for us was when I first started in real estate. That was when 33 got connected to 78.
Do you know what year that period was?
Late 80s, 87, 88, 89.
Just to frame it up, though, this is 22 was around, 33 was around, 78 didn't exist.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, well, the extension 78 was extended in New Jersey. So, but what's different about this is that was a one-off. I mean, that was just that it affected just our region for the most part. This is what we're seeing now is the other thing I'll say is people coming in from, you look at all the counties around us. We're primarily Lehigh, Northampton, Carbon County. That's our footprint for our MLS. When you look at Montgomery, Bucks, we're Walmart. Okay, so I mean, they look at us. People from New York, we're a flea market. Okay, if we're Walmart to the people from Montgomery and Bucks, we're a flea market to the people from New York.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, that's how I'm looking at this because it's like Christmas for them. Yeah, and it's Christmas for me because I own 100 and some properties, and I'm going over my portfolio last week, and I'm recalculating my values based on from the last time I did it a year ago, and my values on my equity went up 10, 15, maybe 20% on many of my properties. So it's a great feeling for me.
Yeah. Jeremy, did you have one?
Yeah, I have a question. So, Jack, for our listener base is built up of novice investors through some experienced investors, but for the novice crowd, if you're thinking about you're seeing this jump in appreciation in the market, you're reading the stories of people moving here out of the cities and putting two and two together, thinking this might be a good time to jump into real estate. What would be some of your advice for those folks? getting either in the market now, buying their second or third rental property? Just some words of wisdom.
I'm a little different than a lot of people. So I've always been a build wealth guy. So a long-term build wealth guy. Yes, I flipped 150 properties in my career. I have. I'm not going to give up on a transaction or a deal if it's a deal, but not every deal is a good rental. But I've always, at heart, my primary focus and what I've always preached to people is to be a build wealth guy. And I'll tell you, I've spoken to, I've sold flip properties to many people. And there were some people I've sold 20, 30, 50 flip properties to. And a lot of the time, they don't put their money back into their business, and the money goes elsewhere. Whereas I took money from my business, from my real estate brokerage business, from any other business, and put it into my real estate assets. Whereas most people don't do that. They're getting in, they're flipping, or they're doing whatever, and then they're taking that money is going elsewhere. I didn't operate that way, but that's why I'm in the position, a very good position I am in today that I'm very proud of. You know, so I don't think there's ever a bad time to get into real estate. I really don't. You know, on an up market, I mean, yes, is it very, very difficult to find a deal now? Yes, it is. But but it can be had if you work hard enough and you don't limit yourself from any possibilities or whatever. You sometimes got to be a little creative, in what you do. You guys are outside the box thinkers. I like that, and you got to be an outside the box person to be able to be an acquirer in this market because, the rule of thumb is you buy low, you sell high, and I don't know that we're done being high yet, so I don't know. I don't think we are,
Well, that's the $1 billion question, right? Because there's a very big consensus that, every day I'm getting calls from, and I do a lot of commercials. So every day it's like, should I wait? Should I wait? Should I wait? And I'm like, no. And you've lost a bunch of opportunities in asking all of these questions and not just coming and looking at inventory. And, a lot of people are discouraged from our market because it's almost impossible right now to get some inventory.
I will tell you what I preach to my agents, my own agents. In my real estate career, I was in the year 2000. I was featured in Realtor magazine as the #2 agent in the country for units sold. Very proud of that.
That's awesome.
We sold 724 units that year. This was long before I had a team before anybody knew what a team was.
That's insane.
Yeah, and it was a team of 3 people. So, but anyways, we did that. But I've always. My first broker, Bob Agentis, is the smartest real estate guy I ever. I was blessed to be able to be mentored by him because one of the things that he told me was, if you have the groceries, they have to shop at your store, whether they like you or not. Now, I didn't understand what that meant when he told me that when I was 19 years old. But when I was 22, when I was starving, I knew what I reflected on that conversation. I knew what he meant by that. And from that point forward, I determined that I was always going to be a listing agent. My primary focus was going to be in listings. Only because, and now you're in a situation like this, I have my own agents will call me and they'll complain and yell and scream because, they were one of 20 offers and didn't get the deal. And they were $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 over list price. And I would say to them at that point, this is why Jack preaches what Jack preaches. If you were the listing agent, who's the one person guaranteed to get paid? It's that simple, So I've always, in my career, I was 80% listing agent, 15% investor buyer, and 5% buyer, probably less than that actually. So that's why.
It's amazing. I appreciate that. A lot of people don't know where the market's turning or what's happening. And Jeremy, you own a bunch of units as well. So, crystal ball wise, the selection plays a little bit of something. I haven't seen that the Lehigh Valley is insulated. You mentioned that as well. And we have this perfect microcosm. But yeah, property prices are going up. Everybody's kind of flocking here. And COVID, you said it, is the best marketing that we never really wanted. But but it's here. What does this mean for like the Lehigh Valley Realtors? Are there more Realtors now looking here? Because I remember pre-COVID, it was like we had so many new Realtors moving to this market. And, you know, the orientation classes are like 70 people now. So you must be seeing some changes in that regard.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes, we're seeing a lot less people getting into the business. But I will say this: we didn't, from a board perspective, from the MLS perspective, we did not see. We expected a 20% decline in licensing. You know, people, just getting out of the business. But we didn't see that. Right now, we're at around 2,600 members in our local board. And now we're starting to see it ramp up again, that people are getting into the business. I mean, I will say this, and I'm an optimistic guy. I'm always an optimist, and I'm an outside the box person. But right now it is tough. Like, I've had people ask me, Jack, I'm gonna get my real estate license. Depending on their makeup and what type of person they are, I'm a realist, and I don't like to blow sunshine at people. If you have to be a certain mindset and very, to be able to do this for a living, because the statistics haven't changed. In fact, they're probably even more so today. 10% of us make 90% of the money. And, if you're not going to be in that 10%, it's not easy to be in that 10%. It's not, it's an 80-hour a week deal. It's a major commitment. Sometimes there's sacrifices, personal sacrifices, family sacrifices. I'm not seeing a great deal of people getting into the business, maybe moving in from the outside the area. But it's been pretty consistent, even after COVID. I would say that.
That's interesting. So, Jack, I wanna kind of go a little different direction with questioning. Do you mind your investment properties? Do you mind going over a sample deal that you did recently, like what you bought it for, rehab you had to put in it, what you're renting it for, refinance, like how did you structure it, the financing, etc., just to kind of give the listeners an idea of, someone just starting out, like, how do I do this? How can I piece this together? How do the numbers work?
All right, so I'm a cash guy, and I buy mostly distressed stuff. So, it's been very difficult for me to buy anything as well. I buy a lot of sheriff sale stuff, a lot of tax sale things, sometimes off the MLS. Sometimes I will get a phone call and somebody just wants to get out of something, and they know that, or they referred to me, or they know that I buy properties. But typically I buy cash. And what I'm looking to do is to create value. So I'm looking for the fact that it's distressed. Maybe it needs a kitchen. Maybe if it's a residential, single family residential, maybe it needs a kitchen, a roof, windows. It might, we've done everything from studs up, So what I'm looking for is I will refi. I'm but I don't necessarily refi all of the money I have into it out of it. I don't. I know that's odd, but I am not. I'm at a different stage than some of your people might be in that I'm not looking for that. That cash. I want my loan to value to be very, very low. My goal, personal goal, and this is where a lot of people screw up. My personal goal, when I decide to quit, if I ever decide to quit, but my decide to quit is to, walk away with 50 paid off properties. Okay,
Yep.
That's just my goal.
Yeah, Jack, were you always like that? Like when you started buying properties, maybe 20 years ago, did you max out your cash out, like have a higher LTV, or were you always more on the conservative side, like a slow build wealth type of approach?
No, there was a couple times I did max out my LTV only because I needed the money for other deals. Okay, right. But see, I don't look at this stage of the game. I don't look at it as a per property deal. To me, I look at it from a portfolio standpoint. Okay, so that changes things a little bit, and I understand when you're starting out, sometimes you can't do that. You gotta look at it. You gotta max out because you want those funds to be able to put into another project. I get that.
Yeah.
But I'm not there right now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Before you jump forward, I got to ask, did you have the foresight to think of it as a portfolio in your first acquisitions when you were like, I'm buying this because, right? That was your goal? You set out a plan.
Here's what happened to me. I was always made very good money when I was on the street selling. Okay. I made very, I was one of the top agents in the country for years, but I was driving down the road one day, Broad Street in Bethlehem, West Broad Street in Bethlehem, coming from the closing. And the gentleman that I had closed for, I found the property for him. I rehabbed the property for him. I sold the property for him. I went to closing for him. Okay. He saw the property one time for 10 minutes. And I made him a lot of money. So anyways, now I made good money doing that. Okay. But I'm driving back to my office and I'm thinking to myself, I'm making all these guys millionaires. and why am I doing this? Because if the market goes south tomorrow, I'm screwed. And these guys are still going to be having their properties, or some of them will still have their properties or doing whatever. So that's when I decided I needed to start buying. So I started to buy, but I had a problem because I'm buying, but I'm also working 80 to 100-hour weeks. I had a wife. I had 2 kids. I had, I was a workaholic. I would go 2 days without sleeping sometimes. I was insane. And I wouldn't do it the same way today anyways, but you learn. But I understood, but I had a problem because I'm buying properties, but I wasn't maintaining them well. Because it would go vacant and I didn't have time to get somebody in there. And this was long before property management became a real thing. Okay. This is back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Property management was not what it is today. You didn't see many property management companies, so I basically started doing it myself, and creating that aspect. After the third or fourth one, I knew that I had a goal of 20 properties within a certain period of time. And I reached that goal. But that's how I had to look at it. I had to look at it from a portfolio standpoint because there was, if I looked at it on a case by case, every time there was, if a roof went bad or a heating system went bad, and if I'm looking at that from a case by case basis, some of these properties, you're only cash flowing $300 a month or whatever it is. That's your profit for the year. So my goal was to get as big as I could so that all those things become minuscule after a while. You know what I mean? It's all one, that's a small, tiny piece of the pie. It doesn't have a devastating effect on that pie. You know what I mean? Whereas it did if I only bought 1 or 2, so that's how I just looked at it.
So from a portfolio perspective, do you still get individual loans for every property you refi out of? Do you have a portfolio lender, several properties grouped together? How does that look?
My advice would never be to work with one lender. My advice would be to spread your lenders out. I work with 5 different commercial lenders. I've watched what a commercial lender can do to an individual guy. And
can you share some of that just so our listeners understand?
I had a friend that I sold some properties to. He wasn't huge or anything like that, but he had, I think, 14, 15 properties, and between them maybe 25 units or something like that. And I walked into his office one day and he was paler than I am and was very upset. And I said, oh my God, what's the matter? He goes, the bank just called my loans, and the bank just called my loans. What am I going to do? The market had just turned and the bank decided they were going to be more conservative now, but the market had turned a month before, and the projections for the market was not good, so he wound up, losing some of his properties and he was leveraged high. And he wound up losing some of them and having to have to sell, others and stuff like that, and wound up out of the business. So I learned from that experience, and I don't exclusively use one commercial lender.
So, Jack, do you mind I just want to dive a little deeper here. Calling a loan, how can a bank do that? I understand how, but just to explain to the listener, how can a bank do that?
On a commercial note, a lot of times on a commercial note, they can basically say, game's over, we decide we want our money. And so make sure you read the fine print in your commercial notes, and understand what that means, especially understand what a personal guarantee means. In Pennsylvania, there's also personal guarantees on this thing, meaning that they can't only take or go after the property they're financing, they can go after your other stuff too. So, understand what all that stuff means. My Bible says not to be a servant of the lender, and that's what I've subscribed myself to.
Oh, you are honestly a lot of the reason that we created this podcast was because people don't talk about the exact answer from a perspective of someone like you. And I mean, you have a big name, so it's fun to be able to hear this from you. We're going to have to start wrapping up a bit, but we're probably going to have you back on the show because you're great. So one big thing that has affected all of us and all the realtors and this market is there are, I wouldn't say this is a bad thing, but coming soon and off-market stuff and pocket listings and things like that have been nationally recognized from the Realtor Association. And I have dealt with this a lot because I do a ton of commercial and it's big commercial. And sometimes there are sellers that may not want to go on the MLS or stuff like that. But I'm a licensed realtor. I'm in the MLS. So I am now required to, use the MLS, throw the property online. And this happened because there was some discrimination, I can say, where maybe there was somebody like me who had a $5 million property and I wasn't sharing it with somebody who was less fortunate because I didn't think they were a potential buyer. And I'm just using this as an example to explain where we're at. But, rules have changed, regulations have changed, and this coming soon thing has been like the pinnacle of, the MLS and a lot of complaints and issues and agents, yelling at each other. And it's because of the supply and the demand. The demand's up here, the supply is here. You could sell a property in a different way, but that might not be to the best advantage of the seller. And my last point is what I have said months ago is with COVID, with what's going on, if you're a realtor and you don't put your sales or you don't put your stuff into the MLS, you're actually hurting me, you're hurting my investors, and you're hurting the legacy of our market because the appraisers don't have those numbers to look at. And I've been a big proponent of we need to get the data in there so that the appraisers get this. And, if we're missing a $10 million sale or something, it's going to hurt us. I know that was a big warm up. Can you tell us what will be happening with the Realtor Association and the coming soon issues?
Yeah. So basically what's going on is back in November, December, I was out at NAR's convention in California long before COVID started. And I was there when they voted for 8.0. And what 8.0 is it says, whenever when you've listed a property, the moment that you initially give information or share information or market that property to the public in any way, shape, or form, within 24 hours, it has to be put into the MLS. So if you put a sign out front, if you make a flyer, okay, if you put it on social media and say coming soon, okay, within 24 hours, it's got to be on that. And NAR did this because of a lot of coming soon was there were a lot of complaints about it. It was being abused, and quite honestly, and I'm sorry, I do agree with 8.0 to a point. Because I'm sorry, I have not heard a good argument yet for how not exposing a property to the most number of people you possibly could how that is beneficial to the seller. I have not heard a good argument about that yet. Are there certain cases where, I don't know, a celebrity, okay, or a notorious person or whatever in my career, 32 years, and understand this, I sold over 8,000 properties, okay? Probably more than 10,000 actually, but I never sat down and counted, but it's over 8, I know that. In 8,000 transactions, only one time in my career did the seller say to me, I only want you in my house. Only you. Okay? Because I trust only you. And that happened to be an elderly gentleman who had a lot of art inside of his house. So, I mean, okay. So I still cooperated with other agents, but they couldn't go inside of his house. So I showed their buyer, whenever. But I mean, so I don't have a problem with it from that standpoint, from the fact that it is my belief that the more exposure a property has to a ready, willing, and able buyer pool, the more that seller is going to achieve in that sale.
Yeah.
You're seeing that now. You're seeing that right now in our current market, where you're seeing $300,000 properties listed at $299,900 that are selling for $360,000.
We have this now amazing market that's been on this amazing incline, and then we had COVID, and now we have this incline. So, all these appraisers have to get the data right. And so when we have this much change, it's difficult to comp properties and things like that unless you have the data. And I don't think other agents take enough time to understand that because it's such a big deal. And for my world, doing a lot of multifamily and commercial, we have the income approach, and it's different on other properties. So I guess I just also wanted to say, this is an issue for all of us, not just us as the realtors. It's the appraisers, it's the inspectors, it's the investors, it's the people coming here, it's the resales in 4 or 5 years, it's everything. And you administer that. So thank you. Thanks for being awesome. And I hope it works with this coming soon.
Too, though, if you look at it too, in our local market, there's a difference in the market pre-April 1st to post-April 1st. So, I mean, when you're looking at comps now in our local market, you really got to focus on after April 1st, because that's when things really heated up, even more so than that.
Awesome. Well, I got my question now. Jeremy, you want to ask our last question?
Sure, absolutely. So, Jack, we asked this question for everyone. It's a fun question. So what's your favorite restaurant in the Lehigh Valley area?
Oh, boy.
And everyone does that.
Right now, I gotta say it's Silver Creek Steel Club down in Allentown. But that's my favorite place.
Perfect.
Thank you, Jack, for everything. This means a lot, and we hope to have you back on the program in the future. You're our president. You're literally dealing with the worst year ever, but it's honestly, a lot of what we talk about on the program and in the previous ones, if you ever listen, a lot of the investors and people we talk to, they first talk about mindset before they talk about real estate, and you pretty much did the same thing, and it's cool to see what you did. I mean, you're tough as nails, clearly, with everything you've been through. So there's no other better president to have to get us through all this. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. That was very kind words. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, this is Real Estate Investor MBA. That's my co-host, Jeremy Moyer. We have Jack Gross here today. We're going to have everything online. Give us about 72 hours. And thank you all for the support. And Jack, we'll have you on in a couple months.
No problem. Anytime. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.